Welcome into another week of Dropping Dimes. I'm your host, Matt Knost, and we are here to discuss the NBA Finals. Game 1 was last night. I'm sure everybody listening and watching was just as excited as I am, or I was, rather. I've watched a tremendous amount of basketball, and it's all built up to the culmination of this series. And last night was an interesting game. I will say that from the outside. First and foremost, Dario Saric has torn his ACL and he is done for the series. And with that torn ACL, he is now, I don't know the severity of it, but I read torn and out indefinitely, which means he is pretty much done for next season, more than likely too. So Dario, quick recovery. Get the rest, get the rehab, surgery, and everything like that, and come back healthier, stronger, and better than you were before. Jeremy Bowers in the chat already. It's time. It's the best time of the week, says Jeremy, and I appreciate that. Last night, interesting game. Interesting game, to say the very least. I think... So the final score, I don't think, is indicative of the game in and of itself. It was 118 to 105. Suns took it, 13-point lead. And they were up by larger than that at various points in the game. But the biggest differences to me were Milwaukee turned the ball over a handful more times, and the free throw disparity. And I think that, coupled with the fact that early on, especially Milwaukee could not get those damn second chance points. How many times down did we see Lopez with 2 to possibly 3 tip-ins that all just kind of rolled off the back of the rim, and then he'd go to the other side of the rim and tip it up, and it would just kind of bounce around a little bit and roll off the other side, and then run to the other side and tip it up. Had they gotten those early on, it might have made a little bit of a difference. The free throw disparity, though, was huge. I wrote down in my notes, so through 3 quarters, the Bucks have shot 6 total free throws, going 2 for 6. And you can thank Giannis for the misses. And then the Suns had shot 19, going 19 of 19. Now, hats off to them. Excellent free throw shooting. And if you're going to go to the charity stripe, you got to make the other team pay. And they definitely did. But that difference of 19 to 6 is just utterly massive. And then I saw someone on Reddit boil it down to an even better stat, which is from the 8:13 minute mark of the first quarter to the 9:30 mark of the fourth quarter, which was almost 35 minutes of a 48-minute game. Basically 35 minutes. Milwaukee shot 2 free throws to the Suns 19. 2 to 19. That disparity is massive. Now, I'm not saying that the Suns didn't earn those free throws, but, I tweeted out, like, Devin Booker was getting officiated like he was 2006 Finals Wade. He's just getting calls that the other team isn't getting, and they're the exact same fouls. There's a foul in the finals. If you really wanted to, you could call a foul on every single offensive possession. You just can. And Booker is getting the calls. And on the flip side, Chris Middleton, who's getting hammered just as hard, is not getting any of those calls. If I was Bud and Middleton, I would be anticipating, I'd be talking to my fucking accountants and being like, how much can I write off of this, me about to go off on the refs? Does this advantage give me an advantage on my taxes at all? Because I am willing to fork over 6 figures if publicly lambasting the refs well, I'm going to publicly lambast the refs. Can I gain any kind of advantage from that beyond maybe they'll officiate this a little more even-handed? Because by the end of the game, like the disparity in the free throws had leveled off. It was still in the Suns' favor. But at that point, it didn't really matter because the Suns had a sizable lead. I mean, the Bucks were from that 35-minute stretch. Bucks went up from up to down 15. And there's a difference of 17 free throws in that mix. That's a wild swing. When you look at everything else, all the other factors, it's really a relatively even game overall. I mean, if you want to get granular on the numbers, there was no massive difference between the two teams. Bucks shot 45% from the field. Suns shot 46%. Bucks actually shot 44% from three, and the Suns shot 32%. So the Bucks going 9 of 16 from the free throw line. There's 7 misses in there, but the Suns attempted 10 overall more free throws at 25 of 26 is what they ended up making. So they score that many more points from the charity stripe. It's really that and the Bucks turning the ball over a couple more times. That's it. That's the difference in the game. The Bucks shot better overall from the field. And like watching it, I couldn't, as it's unfolding, like the biggest advantages were anytime the Suns were running pick and roll, they were hunting out Lopez and then eventually Portis once they subbed out Lopez. And Lopez was getting cooked, just straight cooked. If they managed to get CP on a Lopez one-on-one in pick and roll, then CP was going to get whatever he wanted, whether it was a three or to probe the defense on pick and roll. And then they changed the coverage on pick and roll from switch everything and try and go above the screen to drop coverage where you get Lopez going down into the paint. And then CP is just going to go, okay, well, I will, basically probe into the interior of the lane. And if you collapse down on me, I'm going to throw a lob to Ayton, or I'm going to shoot a mid-range shot, which I am excellent at. And it was that over and over again. And they subbed him out and they put Portis in, and it was more the same. And Booker got in on it as well. And it was just pick and roll, death by 1,000 cuts on Lopez and Portis. So late in the game, Bud switched to a small ball lineup with Giannis at the 5. And that was interesting. I think that is potentially a recipe for success for the Bucks. And hats off to Giannis, man. I mean, he had what looked like it was going to be a season-ending injury a freaking week ago. His knee went a direction that made me leave the comfort of where I was watching the game because I was cringing so hard. Walk out of the room, and my wife saw the look on my face, and she was like, "What's wrong?" And then I described to her, and she almost threw up. I was like, it was going like this, and then the knee started to bend. And the fact that he's out there now, he wasn't pressing his normal advantage offensively. And perhaps that's just he needs to test out his knee and slowly kind of reacclimate into game speed. And also the team has, won 2 straight games without him. So he doesn't want to upset the apple cart on this and just kind of slowly reintegrate. But to have him out there and by and large looked pretty good. There was a moment, I want to say it was late in the first half, early in the third quarter, where it looked like he was favoring that knee for a short while. I don't know that I recall that maintaining later on. I did see it at one point. That could have just been him being tired in the moment, but it looked like he was favoring that leg slightly as he's walking. But then he's got that chase down block, which people are equating to LeBron's. And let's be honest, LeBron's was better. It was in a bigger moment. So, some people like NBA, the NBA on its Twitter account, whatnot, like a block that will live side by side with LeBron's. And like, I don't know about that. Had the Bucks won, and that was part of the charge to get them back into it, because, that could have been in a big momentum swing, and the Bucks were turning it on late in game, perhaps, but I don't know. But anyway, Giannis didn't look as though his knee was, bothering him tremendously. But I will say this, man, if the Bucks want to have any kind of shot, Drew Holiday need some sort of consistency from him. You never anticipate him being your primary, but for the duration of the rest of the regular season, he was a definitive upgrade over Bledsoe, and he still is on the defensive front. And, he chipped in, he got a nice amount of assists. He's still getting rebounds. He's doing all the other things, and he's still a menace on defense. But he shot piss poor from the field overall. I believe he went 0-4 from 3. So if he's not going to be much of a help offensively, then Giannis can't be as passive as he was through first 3.5 quarters of the game last night. And, that was a winnable game. You take the free throws out of it. Booker shot 38% from the floor overall, but Chris Paul and DeAndre Ayton were nothing short of fantastic. And Cam Johnson and Mikal Bridges were excellent once again. I'm a big fan of Cam Johnson, and I like him every time he gets in. I started to really appreciate it once Oubre was out of the lineup in the bubble last year. And I remember, I got a hold of a couple Suns fans that I know, and I was like, this is a huge upgrade for you guys to take his minutes away and get more run for Bridges and Johnson in there, because of the length and the defensive intensity that they can give you, plus the outside shooting that they provide. And it seems like every time Cam Johnson is in there, he's making the correct read as to when to shoot, when to pass, when to make his presence felt, over and over and over again. But between him and Mikal Bridges, that's a nice punch to have as your 4th, 5th, 6th options on offense. It'll be interesting though with the Suns. So with Saric out, who exactly is going to get, the extra run in those minutes? They played Kaminsky for almost 4 minutes in the game, and he literally had zeros across the board. Didn't attempt a shot, free throw, didn't get a rebound, assist, steal, block, nada, nothing. Didn't commit a foul. Literally zeros across the board. Which I'm not knocking Kaminsky for that. Hasn't played much of anything in a while, and to suddenly be in there in game 1 in the finals, you're just trying to help your team and not hurt them at that point. Sorry, I got a sneeze coming on. But with Saric out, it's not like Saric was ever intended to play huge minutes, but he is going to come in and give you double-digit minutes and get rest for some of your primary starters. So does that mean then Torrey Craig is going to be playing more minutes, which not a bad thing, especially for a guy that they got off of the scrap heap, who's been bouncing around. I know, technically Torrey Craig is going to get a ring this year no matter what, because he was on the Bucks at one point and now he's on the Suns. So regardless of who wins, Torrey Craig does get a ring. So congratulations to Torrey Craig. But yeah, do you get more run out of possibly Torrey Craig? Are you going to lean heavier minutes and go with the smaller lineup with your Cam Johnsons and campaigns of the world? Because I don't see the deeper aspects of the bench really coming into play. So you really right now, they're going to go 8 deep because I don't see Etwan Moore or Abdel Nader or anybody else getting the extra minutes. So perhaps it is just as simple as, all right, Cam Johnson, we now need you to play that extra between you and Torrey Craig, that extra 5, 6, 7 minutes, whatever that we would get Dario. Say Dario plays 10, 12, well, we can split that up and play our starters perhaps a little bit more instead of Ayton playing 38, 39 minutes, then we get 42 out of him, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah. And then too, if the Bucks switch to that small ball lineup with Giannis at the 5, and when they did that, it was Giannis, Middleton, Holiday, Connaughton, and Bryn Forbes. And will the Suns be able to hang if Ayton is going to be out there? Because then he should, clean up on the glass. Not to say that he didn't last night, even with Lopez or Portis or Tucker in there. And you could sub in Tucker for Bryn Forbes and have Tucker be, technically your small ball 5, shift Giannis to the 4, or vice versa. And then you get Middleton on the 3. But Tucker's not really hitting his corner threes as he has done in years past. It's so weird because it used to be money in the bank when he was on the Rockets. Just like you can't leave. He's an assassin from those corners. And this postseason run, it's been up and down. So perhaps you put Tucker in there, but if they're going to roast Lopez and Portis, then perhaps earlier on in the game, switching to this, their version of the death lineup and put Giannis at the 5 and just have all shooters out there and let him run roughshod. But once again, if the free throw disparity is evened out, then this game is much closer. You couple that with if Lopez, like I said earlier, gets some of those tip-ins, then this isn't such a massive point differential in favor of the Suns. But credit to the Suns. I mean, they just kept, it seemed as though when you were watching it, it was easier for the Suns to get a bucket than it was the Bucks. They just had, it seemed as though they had a better feel and rhythm within their offense of, thanks to Chris Paul, probing and finding the weak points within the defense over and over and over again. It just, anytime they had an offensive possession, it was within the rhythm of their offense that they were finding shots. Whereas the Bucks, it always seemed to be a slightly more of a task. So it's unsurprising to me, that the Bucks won and had very large leads because their offense looked slightly more effortless as the game was progressing. And the Bucks basically needed Middleton to do everything, especially come second half. And he's shown as of late that he can step up in these big moments. So Johnny Shoemaker says they confirmed that Saric tore his ACL. Yeah, he's done. I read it right before, like 40 minutes ago or 30 minutes ago, that he's toast. And the worst part is that didn't even look all that bad. You can go back and watch the replay where, he's running down and it's on the right block and he's got the ball and he's charging in and he just jump stops. And that right, I was expecting the right knee to buckle or I think it was the right knee. But I was expecting it to buckle or whatnot or have some, and it just looked like a too much strain when you find out that's the moment at which he blows his knee out. But Ishmael asked, do you think the Bucks can steal game 2 and tie the series? I do. Look, the Bucks lost game 1 to the Hawks. The Bucks lost the first 2 games to the Nets. Now the Nets one, they're not playing at full strength. But still, you're down 2-0 to the Nets. And then you're down, you lose the first game to the Hawks. So this is not uncharted territory for the Bucks. And then you think about the fact that more than likely Middleton, Bud, and I would actually assume Giannis too are going to be publicly lambasting the refs, saying this foul discrepancy is ridiculous. And I think they'd be wise to say nothing about the calls that the Suns were getting, unless you're saying similar fouls were happening to us and we're not getting those calls. Don't belittle or undercut the calls that the Suns are getting, because once again, it's the finals and you can make a call on every single possession. There is a foul quite a bit. And guys are less apt to complain. I mean, they just take it within the flow of the game. So when you see somebody like Middleton, who's just looking at the ref like, can I please get a foul call? You kind of side with them. Like there was one in the third quarter where Booker got one and he was on his butt and he looks up at the ref like, what the fuck, man? And they gave him a late call. But at that point, he had shot so many free throws. It's just like, what exactly are you complaining about? You're getting all the calls on the floor right now. No other player out here is getting the superstar treatment. None. And of the 4 guys that are technically the apex predators, 2 per side, you've done the least amongst these 4. That's why I tweeted out, but that's what reminded me of Wade in 2006. It's like, dude, if Dirk isn't getting these calls, why in the world is Dwayne Wade? And I have nothing against Dwayne Wade. Just he hasn't proven that he is deserving of these calls. That's superstar treatment. That takes numerous seasons of being an apex predator for then the refs to treat you as though you're different from everybody else. And I'm not saying that given the choice between like Booker and Middleton that I take Middleton just because the upside of Booker is so much higher than Middleton. But Middleton has basically been in a discussion of more All-Stars and All-NBAs and been on a team of that's perennially now over the past 3 seasons or so been in the championship level discussion. This team could do it. They've got a lot of interesting pieces. They're a tough team. They're a tough out, especially in the regular season. So Middleton, Bud, and Giannis, and I think, on some level, if I was Giannis, I would just tell all my teammates, I'll pay your fines. Let's all complain about the refs. I'll pay everybody's fines. I don't care how much it is. I've set aside, talked to my accountant, and I have set aside $3 million to cover every single one of these fines. We're not going to come anywhere near that, but, $50,000-ish for fines, potentially 100, depending on what it is, but in that ballpark. So if everybody does it, then more than likely, we're talking about somewhere between $500,000 and a little over $1 million. I think Giannis can afford that. And if it gets the league and the refs to sit down and watch the tape and figure out where they screwed up and where they didn't, and you can get a more evenly called game, because once again, you take the free throws out of it, this game is dead even. Bucks turn the ball over more, or Phoenix forced more turnovers, depending on your perspective. Bucks hit more threes, or Phoenix missed more threes. Once again, it's all about perspective. But they shot pretty much equal from the field as a whole. And especially if the Bucks are shooting a higher clip from 3, then it doesn't matter that the percentage of your field goals overall are 1% better. Technically, that should really favor, the Bucks. I mean, the Bucks hit 5 more threes and they only took 2 more. But 5 more. So there's 15 points right there. So yes, I do think the Bucks can take game 2. I don't foresee this being some sort of sweep. If Bud makes the, adjustments, and especially, I realize it too, it's a game 1. Like, everybody wants to freak out. It's a game 1. And it's hard to fully assess what this series looks like. Anybody that's saying, Suns in 4 outside of the most ardent, diehard Suns fans, I think is out of their mind. In no way did I watch last night's game and think to myself, Phoenix is clearly superior. Now, like I said before, their offense seemed to flow a little bit smoother and easier, but it doesn't mean it was so lopsided that you're looking at it going, wow, there it is. It's over. It's over. Pack your bags, folks. Break out the brooms. Milwaukee, you're going to witness a sweep come next week. The Wackness asks, if the Bucks lose a championship, do they fire Bud? I don't think they can at this point. Now, if they get swept, maybe. And especially if like 2 out of the next 3 are just bad, I mean, they just get destroyed, then possibly you can make a case. But I think at this point, they won't, because what coach is left out there? Okay, you want to fire Bud? Fine. Who's the replacement? Because, the early speculation with Carlisle leaving Dallas was he wanted the Milwaukee job. Whether or not that's true, I have no idea. He ends up going back to the Pacers, where he got his coaching start. Took over for Bird, and so perhaps that will work out best for him. It's also a younger-ish team that he can help mold better, as opposed to the established individuals that just made it to NBA Finals in this. But outside of Carlisle, like who out there has championship pedigree that you can get? And if I'm the Bucks front office, I'm looking at this field of individuals that would still be available, and there's still, there's some good coaches out there, but none of them where you're looking at it and be like, that's the difference right there. That's who's going to get us over the hump. So no, I think if Milwaukee loses, unless it's in spectacular fashion, and I think it had to be truly like monumentally spectacular, I think Bud is the coach next season. Now, after next season, we shall see. But yes, I think that's good. So Jeremy Bowers asked thoughts for shows once the finals are done. Well, once the finals are done, I'm not sure. I haven't thought that far ahead. I'm just so myopically focused on the finals for right now. I should probably be looking towards the future. But as of right now, no, I am just thinking about the finals. So what adjustments would I make for both teams? Well, if you're the Suns, Booker didn't shoot particularly well, but I don't know that I would be tremendously concerned with that, because I don't think it maintains. I mean, he shot especially piss poor from 3. He went 1 of 8. And does anybody out there really foresee Booker going 1 of 8 again or consistently during this finals? No chance. But between him and Crowder went 0 of 5. Like, that's now with Crowder, you're going to have those games. You're going to have games where he shoots 4 of 7 in the first half, and you're like, dear God, it's Crowder on the Heat again versus the Celtics last year, which is nothing you can do. This guy is going to consistently just make shot after shot right in your face. So you're going to have those games with Crowder where he does go 0-5. Now, that seems relatively anomalous. I think the more fitting bad game from Crowder would be 1-for-5. I think that's a more likely outcome if he's going to have a bad game. But there is going to be a Crowder game where he does, like I just said, shoots 4 of 7, 5 of 9, and just has a great game. And all of a sudden, Suns are up big. I think more consistency from Booker, 1 of 8 from 3. I don't really foresee. And especially, hopefully, if I'm Booker, I've got a night where I'm not feeling it like that and I miss, 7 threes. Perhaps I dial it back and I don't go full Westbrook on this and just continue to shoot when I'm not making from long distance, dial it back just a notch. Because had certain factors not gone in the Suns' favor, that 1 of 8 could have been the Achilles heel. And between the two of them, him and Crowder, 1 of 13, that's what we'll be crowing about today. But Tom Haberstroh put up a great stat on Twitter. It's not really, it's just a culmination stat of Chris Paul over the last 2 games. And this is the zone that Chris Paul is in right now, which over the last 2 games, close out on the last one, and, game 1 today, 73 points. He is shot from the field, 28 of 43. He's 11 of 15 from three-point land, 17 assists, which led to 41 points, and 2 turnovers. And both turnovers were in last night's game. 2 turnovers. And that in and of itself is a very weird. Chris Paul had 2 turnovers. One is kind of freakish. 2 is very different. But 73 points, shot 65% from the field, 73 from 3. And 17 assists that led to 41 points. Now, is Chris Paul going to maintain shooting that well from 3? 73 points seems highly unlikely. But he has been shooting insanely well, playing with all the confidence in the world. And a lot of people are saying that he stole Ayton's 20th rebound to close out the game last night to stymie him getting over 20 points and 20 boards for a full-on double-double. I didn't see it that way. I mean, it's an interesting narrative because it couples with, right now, CP is the odds-on favorite to win Finals MVP. It's after 1 game. Overreaction time in that, yes, I do think he is, if the Suns win, so long as he plays like Chris Paul, he'll win the Finals MVP. But it's game 1. This very easily could swing to Giannis or Middleton if the Bucks go up 2-1. It's like, suddenly all those CP3 bets that you put down are null and void. But people were saying that, he stole that rebound to stop Ayton getting to 20 to maintain the narrative that he is the most important, player on the Suns. I think Ayton would have to do that type of game every game to really enter into discussion, to leapfrog over Booker, to even enter into second, let alone first. But given the overall narrative of the Suns as a whole, where Chris Paul coming in and the leadership that he provides and taking this group of young guys and fostering their confidence and just basically providing the floor generalship that they were lacking in previous seasons, but last year into this year, the greatest change, and that would be huge. To not make the playoffs last year into winning the championship this year, the narrative will be entirely around Chris Paul and what a difference he has made to all these guys as a whole. It would take Devin Booker going off for 40 or 50 a couple times over these next 6 games if it goes 7. But it would take Book just being everything for their offense to steal that finals MVP. I just think the narrative is too strong with Chris Paul, especially when he's playing this well. But, you know, the idea that Chris stole that rebound, I think it's just a lot of people don't like Chris Paul. And for obvious reasons, man. If you watch enough of them, other players don't like Chris Paul. Other players do. There's a whole, but he is a divisive individual. Go look at the Boogie yelling at him, saying, "This is why nobody likes to play with you." In that Clippers series in the closeout game of Game 6. There's some truth in that. Chris Paul rubs guys the wrong way and his own teammates. Eventually, he wears out his welcome, it seems like, just because he's so dogged and determined. But it's been hard to deny how good he is. And it's nice to see him, in the finals, being a huge part of it. I've always enjoyed watching Chris Paul play. He has always been a surgeon, just moving around a defense, probing it, finding the weakness over and over and over again. I do like, for the Suns last night, even with CP in there, they were pushing the pace. Still not as quick as when he was down and Campaign was running the charge. But I do like that it was not, let's just slow it down to a half-court set each and every time up. They were trying to push at various points in the game last night. And I think that's advantageous, and they should try and press that as much as they can. Because the quicker pace, it just forces the defense into having to make split-second decisions. And the Bucks are good at defense. But the Suns have a lot of weapons. And, depending on what personnel is out there. But if you're pushing the pace, you got CP3, you got Booker, you got Bridges. If Cam Johnson is out there, Jay Crowder is still a threat, even going 0-5 last night. They have guys they can shoot. Saric, if he wasn't hurt, can shoot from outside. So if you're pressing at that advantage and you're getting in and say you try and go straight at the cup and it makes the defense collapse down, well, you can kick out to numerous shooters. When I was watching the game last night, especially when they switched to that, the Bucks did, they switched to that small ball lineup. In my head, I was like, can you imagine if instead of Bryn Forbes out there, it was Bogdanovich, who was potentially going to be traded to the Bucks on a sign and trade. I believe it was a sign and trade, which never materialized and by some accounts was never really there. But if you had Bogdanovich out there with Giannis at the 5, even I don't know that the game would have been that lopsided that you would have had to sub out Lopez. But it just gives you another guy that is more than happy to shoot and has all the confidence in the world and can back it up by making a large percentage of the shots. And just watching him be like, I think I would choose them to win the championship if they had Bogdanovich. I would have been more secure in that assessment. Coming into it, I didn't do a preview show just because I was busy. I was going to do it on Monday, but I ended up getting slammed with a couple other things. By the time I would have gotten around to it, it would have been like 5 or 6 p.m. Plus, I didn't announce it beforehand, which is, kind of late in the day. Anyway, I think I favor the Suns to win the series because I think they just have more guys that I trust. But I'm pulling for the Bucks. I'm happy if either team could win. But for some reason, I've just kind of leading into the playoffs. I like the Bucks' chances a lot, and I've been subtly internally rooting for them in all these various series. Now, some more overt than others. Like against the Hawks, I was definitely rooting for the Bucks. Just because the Hawks are so young, the Bucks have been on this cusp, and if they don't make this push, then I don't know what this team does. And it falls into this weird little, what do we do? What don't we do? And they're in disarray. And you could say as a Bulls fan, that's what I should want, but we're not in the same league as them. So, and they're not, even if they lost to the Hawks, we're still not in the same league as them. So I'm not really concerning myself with that right now. But I figure the Hawks, it's just like, they're so young that they can run this back. They took the interim tag off of McMillan. He is now officially their coach. They'll have a full off season together and they can run this back, and they're going to be really interesting, for the next couple of years with a core of young guys. So, overly pulling for the Bucks, but I think the Suns, it's especially once we get into the bench. I am like I said earlier in the show, big Cam Johnson fan. Torrey Craig has been a spark plug type of jack of all trades since he was on Denver and really blossomed on Denver. And I've liked him since then. And I know that they felt the crunch of having to get rid of him. It's, Denver had an embarrassment of riches via drafting and developing players. They just had too many people. They just didn't have enough minutes to play all of them. And look at all the various guys that were on Denver and now are either starters or playing excellent bench units for various different teams. And Torrey Craig is one of those guys. I've liked him since he was on Denver, and it's good to see him. But you take those two guys plus Campaign and then Sarge before he went down. It's like there's four guys that I trust right there. Whereas on the Bucks, it's like Pat, Portis, although last night he got toasted, but Pat and Portis. And outside of that, I'm not entirely sure. And to be, then it's like Bryn Forbes, maybe. Jeff Teague, maybe. Thanasis Antetokounmpo, no. And then you got nothing. So the depth, I think, favors the Suns. And the makeup of the team, just with the steady leadership at the point guard or at the guard position, I think it's a distinct advantage for the Suns. Daniel Saville over in the chat says Chris Paul's leaving it all on the court. He's only 3 wins away. Yes, he is only 3 wins away. Or he's 4 losses away from having lost the finals. Still early. Let's not go bananas. It's game 1. I love the overreaction to game 1s, though. It always happens, and people are just like, there, it's over. So that's it. And you're like, okay. All right. Talk to me after game 3. Because game 2, you see the adjustments they do. And then game 3 is really, I think, where the rubber hits the road. Because now we've seen the opening, assault, the counter adjustments, and then what actually the makeup, what the strategy of the coaches is at that point. So game 2 is adjustment time. What will Monty Williams do to win that game 2? And I would imagine it's going to be a lot of the same. CP, run this offense out there. Hunt mismatches. If they're going to leave Lopez out there and they're willing to switch everything, then keep running switches until we get you on Lopez and until he can make us pay for that. Whether it's on the offensive or the defensive side, let's just keep running it. And then Book, when you get the ball, let's do the same thing there. And if they sub in Portis, boom, let's do this. That brutal was when they had Portis in there. They finally subbed him in for Lopez, and CP3 straight cooked him for that gorgeous finger roll down the middle of the lane. And then came down, Bucks got a 3, and CP just came down and dropped a three right in Portis's eye. It's like, oh. And late in that game, the Bucks were putting together a charge. They cut that lead to 6, and then Booker came down and hit a three, his only three of the game, which was huge. And took the game back up to 10 points. But, they were putting it together late again, but it was too little too late at that point. It's asking quite a bit to come down from that large a deficit. Can happen. We've seen it in this playoffs happen. We've seen it in previous years happen. So it's not out of the realm of possibility. But yeah, will Monty maintain more of the same? What is his rotation going to be like now with Saric out? He's already in the playoffs. Your rotations should limit down to about 8 guys, 7 to 8. And that's what Phoenix is at right now, 7 to 8 guys. Campaign has to come in to give CP some time off the court. And Cam Johnson has to come in and give various guys a little time off the court. And then you would bring Saric in to get Ayton some rest. So if you take Ayton out and you're not going to put in Kaminsky, you're going to go with the smaller lineup. So that just means then what you're going to shift around. Like, it'll be interesting to see what they do to get Ayton the rest that he needs. And then on the flip side, the Bucks. It's like, I don't know that technically either coach really needs to make all that many adjustments. Bud, I think it's, if you can tell that you're getting smoked in these switches, then don't switch everything. And then if it comes down to pick and roll, I think the drop coverage you were getting killed in. So maybe fight over the top of all pick and rolls and just, I don't know. That's where the advantage of Chris Paul has a significant impact. Just finding the small, almost infinitesimal weakness over and over and over again in those situations. And when he's playing, like Haberstroh pointed out, 73 points over these past couple games, 41 points off of 17 assists, shooting 73% from three, just ridiculous numbers. If he continues, Ben Friedman asked another coach on the Bud. I talked about it earlier. I think Bud is fine because he's safe. But yeah, the adjustment. So for the Bucks, once again, go look at the numbers. If you take the handful of extra turnovers that the Bucks had, along with the free throw disparity, the Bucks played arguably a stronger game. Go look at the numbers. People are going to harangue Bud, and I think you can for the Lopez and Portis situation when they were just getting toasted over and over again. Don't switch, just fight over the top of every pick and roll, and have help defenders stream in. And if Jay Crowder has another cold game, then Jay, your guy's a help defender, or whatever the case is. Figure out something else so they're not getting these easier buckets from the mid range. And for the time being, sacrifice the three. It's what the Bucks have done in years past, where I think it was last year and possibly the year before, potentially it was 2 years ago and then possibly last year, but they gave up the most uncontested threes in the league, and it didn't seem to hurt them amazingly. So perhaps revert back to that defensive strategy of, we're willing to give up threes, we're just not going to give up the paint or anything in the interior. But I don't know how much of a difference, because watching all of these playoffs, at no point have I felt like the refs have tremendously affected the outcome of a game. And last night was the first one where I'm like, geez, man, this Suns are going to the line an awful lot compared to the Bucks. And I'm not saying, like I said before, that the Suns have not earned these free throws. There's a foul on every play. But if you're going to call it one way, call it the other. let's just get to some sort of equilibrium. It's never going to be perfect. And I don't want it to be perfect. Human error is a part of this. But when I'm watching this going, I really feel like this is like a Junior Donaghy situation. And the refs are unduly influencing the outcome of an NBA Finals game by sending one team to the line more than the other, rather. And, you could say like, oh, the fouls, like total fouls, right? So Bucks were called for 18 and the Suns were called for 14. And you're like, oh, the foul call disparity is not massive, but it's a point of where those fouls are being called and when those fouls are being called. And if the Suns are getting more in the act of shooting, well, they're going to go to the line more and they're going to benefit from those foul calls. And it's a positive situation more so than just racking up fouls in the hopes of triggering the bonus situation. And then you can get to the line. So for difference in fouls, if you're pointing at that being like it was an evenly officiated game, that's not how you look at fouls. You need to look at when they're being called. And that's the true testament of how valuable a foul call is at any given moment. Because by the end of the game, Giannis had shot 12 free throws, but it didn't, for that 35-minute stretch, it is all skewing in one direction and primarily in Devin Booker's favor. Just he's going to the line left, right, and center compared to other guys who are getting fouled in the exact same fashion. And I'm not trying to drag Devin Booker or the Suns. They are taking advantage of what is presented to them, and they won the game. It's not like that was some sort of cheap win. They won by 13. And I'm not overtly homering for the Bucks. I don't really care if the Bucks win or lose. I, for some reason, just slightly more drawn to that team, even though I'm big fans of quite a few guys on the Suns. I wish it was a different year. Like last year, I was easily in favor of the Heat, even though I didn't think they had a real shot. But it's just, I'm sick of the Lakers. I am sick of LeBron. And I think a lot of the primary reason too that I'm so drawn to the Bucks and the Suns by and large, but the Bucks even more so, is this is a team of guys that they have built on their own. Now you can say that with the Suns, but look at the primary difference that I think we can all agree on is CP3 being added to that team. Whereas the Bucks, it's, Middleton and Giannis sat through some terrible seasons together and they have grown and they have built this team. Now the Bucks did go out and trade for Drew, but Drew hasn't been that massive an impact player. And it's also, Milwaukee is one of the small market teams in the truest sense. There are a few cities that are smaller. Your Oklahoma cities, your Clevelands, I'd be curious if Charlotte is smaller. I think Charlotte might be smaller. But then after that, it's practically every other team is a larger city. I mean, Phoenix is the 5th biggest city in this country. It's a big city. So it would give a glimmer of hope to all these small market teams of you can retain your stars and you can win a championship by building from within and drafting and developing. And I think that is good for the NBA as a whole, as opposed to, the Nets or the Lakers. Like the Lakers going out now being floated potentially to get Kemba. I don't know why they do it, unless you can just do it for Kuz and a pick. If you can do it for Kuz and a pick, then yes, I would do it. Even with Kemba's health issues. But the potential of getting DeRozan even though he's piss poor from three, or he may not be piss poor from three. He just doesn't want to shoot them, it seems like. He's got to be the leader in the NBA of he took one step in from the three to shoot that shot pretty consistently. Although he doesn't shoot well from three either. It's not the worst, but he's a good shooter overall. So I think if he really got into the habit of shooting threes over and over and over again, he could raise his percentage to being, mid to upper 30s potentially. Anyway, neither here nor there. But the smallest of small market teams, it gives them a glimmer of hope. I mean, look at the Portland right now. They're larger than Milwaukee, but if they lose Dame, there's a damn good chance that team just wallows in obscurity for the next 10 years. Ben Friedman over in the chat says, I'm rooting for the Suns for the sole reason that they weren't in the playoffs last year, and if they win the title, it gives me hope for my Kings. Yeah. That's a great narrative too. That's what I saw a buddy on the 4th, another NBA fan, and he wasn't jazzed for this because he's like, who's in this? Like, there's no stars. The average person isn't going to give a shit. And I'm like, God, the storyline of one team going from, it's like an NFL parody, one team not making the playoffs to potentially winning the championship, and the other from one of the smallest markets that instead of losing their marquee guy, of spending, a season of going, will he, won't he stay? And what are we going to do? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The fact that they're on the cusp of a championship, that's great for the league as a whole. Parity is something that the NFL has been thriving with. And I wish it would happen more in the NBA, but the NBA is a star driven league. You just got to have one of the true apex predators, and that will help somewhat change the narrative. Now, a lot of people are going to point to this was a weird year with all the injuries, and I agree. It is a weird year with all the injuries, but injuries are part of the game. And as I had discussed on last week's show, the bulk of the injuries that people are going to point at saying all these all-stars missed, I don't think had anything to do with the condensed schedule. It was a lot of really fluke stuff. Giannis with that hyperextended knee could have happened in game 1 of the season, had nothing to do with it. Trae Young rolling his ankle, freak, weird occurrence. AD going down. AD is always hurt. Last year was the anomaly, not this year. LeBron going down. It's amazing that it hasn't happened sooner. The guy has more mileage on him than any other player. It's incredible that he's managed to endure this long. Jamal Murray's, maybe you could chalk that up too. Jaylen Brown, weird play. Like over and over and over again. I think it's a lot of weird plays and happenstance. But the parity situation is a good thing for all of us. And right now, I need to see the numbers for last night, but the projections leading into, we're not doomsday. The projections were the ratings were actually going to be up. And I know at numerous points over this playoffs, ratings have been up and they've been higher than they've been in a few years. So people are perfectly content with the marquee teams getting bounced early. Have zero problem with that. So hopefully, it puts it also, if one of these teams wins, then the next marquee star might be willing to stay in their franchise, or instead of joining forces with one or two other all-stars, does the Chris Paul thing of, hey, these guys are young, they're interesting, and I can make a real impact here. And further cement my legacy. What is a bigger boon for his legacy? Like, if Brooklyn had won the championship this year, is that really that impressive to anybody? Oh, okay. We have 2 former MVPs and another guy who has the best handles I think I've ever seen. I can't think of another maestro with the ball that is better than Kyrie. There are a bunch of guys that are excellent, and I'm not saying that he is so markedly better, but I still think he's the best with the ball that I've ever seen. And somebody who's hit one of the biggest shots in NBA Finals history. Is it shocking that these three guys, along with a collection of other individuals, won a championship? No. And then it gives ammunition to the passive fans or non-fans of the league and be like, see, that's what it is. It's just a bunch of the best guys teaming up, and why do I care? As opposed to, think how amazing this is for Chris Paul's legacy. Over and over and over, we have seen him join a team, and that team is markedly better the season that he joins them. They went from X to Y over and over and over again. And then for various reasons, it just flamed out in the playoffs, and he's gotten hurt a decent amount of the playoffs. And that was part of his legacy. And this year, it's taken that he joins a team and makes them better and really added steroids to that mix. Just freaking HGH Balcode that to the stratosphere of now that is one of the first lines of the summation of his career, of his bio, is Chris Paul. He joins your team. Your team is much better. Go look at the Suns. Go look at Oklahoma City. Go look at the Clippers. Like, the Rockets were already good, but with Chris Paul, they could have won a championship. Had he not gone down hurt, and if they beat the Warriors, they win a championship that year. I don't doubt that in the slightest. So there's a lot on the line. Game 2, what do I think is going to happen? We'll go ahead and close this out. I think it's going to be a closer game than the outcome of this. And if the refs call an even game, I think we could have a 1-1 series after game 2. And then the real series begins. Even if Suns go up 2-0, I'm not willing to put the nail in the coffin on the Bucks because they've been down 2-0 in these playoffs. And, in no way does that mean to me that the team is not going to make it out. We saw the Clippers do it a couple times, and then finally they couldn't overcome it. But 0-2 is not the insurmountable lead that it always feels like. Now, after game 3, if it's 3-0, then you're just trying to not be the Canadians, God bless them. They finally won a game last night, or not last night, but the last game. Was that last night or was that 2 nights ago? I don't know. I've just been from afar looking because talking to a buddy that loves NHL, and he's been keeping me abreast of what's going on. I don't really care, but I like good storylines. But anyway, I think the Bucks can win game 2 if the free throws level out. Then I think Bucks take game 2 because they played a good game overall. They should really hang their hat on that. And the Suns, I would just do more of the same. It's a lot of, not entirely sure that huge adjustments need to be made outside of if you see that Lopez or Portis are getting cooked. If you're the Suns, keep exploiting that. Bread and butter, baby. That's our meat and potatoes, and we're just going to keep feasting on that. And the inverse, Bud, if you see that shit, let's change it up. Let's either not switch everything. I really don't think they need to go from switch everything to it's either switch everything or drop coverage on the pick and roll. And when it's a combination of they do an either or situation, they're just going to get crushed. And I'd like to see more of that small ball lineup with Giannis at the 5. But anyway, I think Bucks take game 2. But I think this is it's going to be a very close game, as evidenced by the stats from last night were by and large a very close game. Couple turnovers and a free throw discrepancy between the two. And that is the tail of the tape on last night's game. There you go. There's dropping dimes for today. So, Mr. Bowers, to your question, I'll think of, hooks and various shows for this in the off season. But I will take some time off. I have watched a boatload of basketball. I've only missed, I think, of the entirety of the playoffs, I've missed 5 games. It was 2 straight Sundays where I missed 2 games, and then there was one random weekday that I had to miss a game. And otherwise, I have been watching nonstop basketball. I love it. Don't get me wrong. There's a reason I'm watching all of it. And I would be even if we weren't doing this show. But I will take a little time off and, try and do some other things at night than watch a shit ton of basketball. But there you go. I will see you guys back next week. Follow me on Twitter. I may end up doing possibly a Monday show after Game 3 on Sunday. Just to talk a little more hoops. But you can follow me on Twitter at Matt Knost. I'll let you guys know if I decide to do it on Sunday. It'll probably be late Sunday as the game is going on and make the decision because I'll have an idea of what my Monday is going to look like. And if I do it, it won't be until probably, I would say 3:30 or 4 p.m. on Monday because I have something until about 3 to 3:30 that day. But there you go. That is it for today's Drop and Dime. So look for me on Twitter at Matt Knost. I'll let you guys know if I decide to do a show on Monday, do a little recap of the first 3 games. And I'll see you guys otherwise next Wednesday for another edition of Drop and Dime. Stay safe out there. Enjoy the next few games. I know I'll be looking forward to it. Enjoy it. Thank you to everybody that joined me in the chat. Ben Friedman, The Whackness, Jeremy Bowers, Daniel Savola, Ishmael, Johnny Shoemaker, Ramon Cook. You guys are awesome. I appreciate it. And I'll see you guys next week with another edition of Dropping Dimes. Until then, adios.